I never thought the word inheritance could feel so heavy. Yesterday I became a millionaire, at least that's what the lawyer said, but I don't feel rich. I feel hollow. Because the only person who ever truly stayed by my side is gone. My name is Elaine. I'm 28 years old, and my Aunt Vivian, the woman who raised me, the woman who saved me, has left me everything she owned. Her house, her company, her money, her entire world. And just when I thought I could finally begin to grieve her in peace, they showed up. My parents. The same people who walked out of my life 15 years ago without a single goodbye. They appeared at the lawyer's office yesterday morning, smiling like ghosts, pretending to be alive. My mother wore pearls as if this was some family reunion, and not a resurrection of my worst nightmare. "We're your parents," she said sweetly. "As your guardians, we're here to help you manage things." I froze. The word guardians sliced through me like ice. Because the last time they had called themselves that, I was 13, crying in an empty apartment with a note in my hand that said, "We can't do this anymore." I remember every detail of that morning. It was October, unusually cold for early fall. The kind of cold that bites, that makes you wish for warmth that isn't there. The alarm didn't go off. Or maybe it did, and I just didn't hear it over the silence. When I opened my eyes, the air felt wrong. Still. Too still. The apartment was too quiet. No clattering from the kitchen. No faint hum of my dad's old radio. No sound of my mom moving through her morning routine. The kind of silence that presses against your ribs until you can't breathe. Their bedroom door was open. It shouldn't have been. Mom always kept it closed when she was in one of her dark spells. But that morning, the door gaped open like a wound. Half the closet was empty, drawers pulled out, only a few socks left behind, and the faint scent of my mother's perfume lingering like a cruel joke. Then I saw at the note, just one page in her looping handwriting. "Elaine, we cannot do this anymore. Your Aunt Vivian will take care of you. We are sorry." 16 words. That's all it took to destroy a child's world. I called her phone, again and again. No answer. I called my dad. Disconnected. I ran from room to room looking for something, a clue, an address, anything that could tell me why. But all I found was that note. And an echo. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the TV on mute, waiting for headlights to flash outside, waiting for the sound of keys in the lock. They never came. By the second day, I ran out of food. By the third, the landlord knocked asking for rent I couldn't pay. By the fourth, I was out of excuses. That's when I called my school counselor. And that's how Child Protective Services got involved. The social worker who came, Miss Dawson, had eyes that looked tired but kind. She called my situation abandonment. That word sounded too big, too official, like something that only happened to other kids. She said she had found someone who would take me, and Aunt Vivian Hughes, my father's older sister. I had only met her twice in my life. She was this tall, elegant woman who smelled like expensive perfume and spoke like she was always running a meeting. She didn't hug, she shook hands. The next morning, she showed up in a sleek black car that looked like it didn't belong anywhere near our broken apartment building. She stepped out wearing a gray suit, her silver hair perfectly pinned back. She looked at me not with warmth, not with pity, but with a kind of calm determination. "Pack what you can carry," she said. Her tone was sharp, but not unkind. "The rest can be shipped later." I didn't cry. Not in front of her. I packed one suitcase, some clothes, a few books, and a small photo album of my parents' wedding. The rest of my life fit into a backpack. When we drove away, I looked out the back window at that apartment, the only home I had ever known, until it disappeared behind us. That drive to her house took 3 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. Neither of us spoke much. She asked if I was hungry once. I said no, even though my stomach growled loud enough for her to hear. Her house looked like something out of a movie. A Victorian mansion surrounded by 2 acres of neatly trimmed hedges and iron gates that gleamed in the afternoon sun. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel real. Inside, the ceilings were high, the furniture old and heavy. Every room smelled faintly of polish and discipline. She showed me to my room, a space larger than our entire old apartment. A 4-poster bed with velvet curtains, a desk by the window, and shelves already filled with books. I remember standing there, staring at the walls, feeling both small and out of place. She gave me rules that night. Breakfast at 7 sharp. No shoes on the hardwood floors. Homework done at the desk, never on the bed. Dinner conversation must include one current event and one personal achievement. Lights out by 10. I broke almost every rule in the first week. Maybe I wanted to test her to see if she'd give up on me too. But she didn't. When I overslept, she didn't yell. She simply said, "The kitchen closes at 7:30," and made me go to school hungry. When I skipped piano practice, she didn't threaten me. She just canceled my weekend outing. She was strict, unyielding, but predictable, and that somehow became my safety. Still, there were cracks in her armor. Once I was crying over a photo of my parents, the one where Mom was laughing in her wedding dress, and Dad looked proud, and Aunt Vivian silently handed me a handkerchief. She didn't say a word. She just sat next to me until my sobs turned into hiccups. Another time when I failed a math test after studying all night, she didn't scold me. She hired a tutor. That's when I realized she wasn't cold, she was careful. She showed love in deeds, not in words. Her world was built on order and logic. She ran a chain of home decor stores across 3 states, Hughes Home Collections. She worked tirelessly, but she always came home for dinner, always. On weekends, she'd take me to her office. Watch people when they negotiate, she'd whisper. See who speaks first, who stays silent, who concedes too soon. Business is psychology, Elaine. Learn the people and you'll win every deal. When I was 16, I wanted to quit piano lessons. I said it was pointless. She said discipline learned in one area of life strengthens every other. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. At 17, I told her I wanted to go to State University because my friends were going there. She said, "You can follow comfort or you can follow potential, but rarely both." We argued the kind of argument that echoes for days. I accused her of controlling me. She said I was afraid to think bigger than my pain. Then she told me something that silenced me. "Your father was brilliant, Elaine, smarter than me. But our parents couldn't afford college. He started gambling to chase what life denied him. I'm trying to break that cycle." For the first time, she spoke about my parents without anger. It made me realize that maybe she wasn't trying to replace them, she was trying to save me from becoming them. When I got accepted to Northwestern, she said only one sentence. "Good. Now prove that I was right to believe in you." That was her version of "I'm proud of you." Looking back, I think I started healing in that house without realizing it. The pain of being left behind never vanished. It just changed shape. It became quieter, sharper, like a scar that stopped bleeding but never faded. And yet, even as I built a new life, a part of me kept hoping my parents would return, that someday they'd knock on that iron gate and say, "We're sorry." 15 years later, they did. But not to say sorry. They came for something else. When I walked into the lawyer's office that morning, I was still wrapped in grief. The kind that sits like a stone in your chest, making even breathing feel like labor. Aunt Vivian had been gone only 3 weeks, and I still caught myself expecting to hear her heels clicking down the hallway or her voice calling from another room. The office smelled like leather and old books, a place where important things happened, where signatures changed lives. Mr. Thompson, Aunt Vivian's lawyer for over 30 years, greeted me gently. His silver hair glinted under the warm light as he offered condolences once more. "We'll begin shortly," he said kindly. "There are a few others joining us today." I thought he meant long-time employees. Maybe someone from the charity board Aunt Vivian supported. I sat down, hands folded neatly on my lap, my heart still raw but steady. And then the door opened. I looked up, and time stopped. Standing in the doorway were my parents. The same faces that had haunted my dreams for 15 years, aged heavier, but unmistakably them. My father's once dark hair had turned to thin strands of gray. My mother's features looked carved by years of regret and sleepless nights, though her eyes still carried that same sharp glint I remembered when she scolded me as a child. My father's voice cracked the air like a ghost returning to claim unfinished business. "Elaine," he said softly, almost tenderly. "Look at you, all grown up, all." I stood, but my body didn't feel like mine. My heart thudded in my throat as my mother stepped forward, her perfume pulling memories I didn't want back. She reached for me, and I froze. Her arms wrapped around me, but I didn't return it. My body went rigid. The warmth I had longed for as a child now felt foreign, undeserved. When she pulled back, she smiled like nothing had ever happened. "We've missed you," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. We saw the obituary in the newspaper, my father added, nodding solemnly. We came as soon as we could. I wanted to ask why now, but my tongue refused to move. Mr. Thompson's calm, professional voice cut through the silence. Let's all take our seats. We'll begin. We sat around a polished mahogany table, me on one side, my parents across from me, as if we were strangers negotiating a deal rather than family reunited after a decade and a half of silence. Mr. Thompson opened a thick folder, the sound of paper slicing through the tension. This is the last will and testament of Ms. Vivian Eleanor Hughes, he began. I'll summarize the key provisions. As he spoke, I couldn't help but notice how my parents leaned forward slightly, their eyes flickering like gamblers watching dice roll. To my niece Elaine Margaret Winters, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the property at 347 Lakeview Drive. All its contents, the business known as Hughes Home Collections, valued at approximately $12 million, and liquid assets totaling $2 million. The heir left the room. I had known she was comfortable but not this wealthy. Then after a pause, Thompson added, there are smaller bequests to longtime employees and annual charitable donations. But the remainder of the estate passes to Elaine. I sat in stunned silence. I didn't even know how to react. And then my mother's hand slid gently over mine. Well, sweetheart, she said softly, this is quite a lot for someone so young. Luckily, you have us to help you handle it. The word help dripped with something that wasn't love. My father cleared his throat. Legally speaking, he began, since we were never officially stripped of parental rights, we remain Elaine's guardians. It would only make sense that we assist in managing her affairs, at least until she's more experienced. My stomach turned to ice. Guardians, again. I looked at Thompson, panic flickering in my chest. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he said evenly, I think there may be some confusion. Let's reconvene tomorrow afternoon once I've gathered all the relevant documentation. My father smiled thinly. That's fine. We're staying at the Westmont Hotel downtown. Maybe we can have lunch first, Elaine, catch up properly. I didn't answer. As they stood to leave, my mother hugged me again, whispering, we have so much to talk about, darling. When the door closed behind them, my knees buckled and I sank into the chair. They can't really take any of this from me, can they? I asked in a shaky voice. Thompson's expression was grave. Your aunt anticipated something like this might happen. She left instructions, but it will take time to assemble everything. Mrs. Bentley, Vivian's old housekeeper, gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Your aunt was a wise woman, she said. Trust that she would never leave you unprotected. Still, as I left the office, my mind replayed every word my parents had said. The way they spoke of me, not to me. The way they mentioned money more than memories. The way their eyes gleamed when Thompson read the numbers aloud. I ignored 3 missed calls from my mother on the drive home. That night, I sat alone in Vivian's study, her scent still lingering on the bookshelves, and tried to breathe. But my heart refused to calm down. By morning, exhaustion had dulled my fear into anger. I needed answers. So when my parents texted to meet for dinner, I said yes. I chose the restaurant, an upscale Italian place Vivian had loved for business meetings. I thought a public setting might protect me from whatever manipulation they had planned. They were already seated when I arrived. My father stood to pull out my chair, smiling as if we were actors playing a scene in some family drama. We ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir, he said cheerfully. Your mother always enjoyed it. I'll have water, I replied. A small statement, but a necessary one. The first 20 minutes were polite, painfully so. They asked about my job, my degree, my friends. They laughed too loudly, as if trying to fill the years they'd left blank. And then my mother's voice softened. We owe you an explanation. I set my glass down and waited. What we did was wrong, my father said, his eyes darting away from mine. I had gambling debts, dangerous ones. We thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe. My mother nodded quickly as if rehearsed. We knew Vivian could provide for you. We couldn't. I was very ill at the time. I stared at them, trying to find even a flicker of sincerity. You had yourselves, I said quietly. That's all I ever wanted. My father looked down. I got help. Been clean 8 years now. We've rebuilt our lives. We just didn't know how to face you. You knew where I was, I asked. We checked in through social services every few years, he admitted. They said you were doing well. Every few years. Enough to ease their guilt, but not enough to actually be there. The waiter came and went, setting down plates of steaming pasta. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. You look so much like your aunt, she said softly. She did well by you. And now, she's left you so much. It must be overwhelming. The tone changed subtle but sharp. The house alone must be worth 2 million, my father added casually. My chest tightened. I've been helping run her company for years, I said. Of course, he replied smoothly. But handling an entire estate is complicated. Taxes, investments, maintenance, you'll need guidance. We can help. And then without shame, my mother leaned in. We're not asking for much. Just maybe help us pay off the condo. 70,000. And your father's medical bills another 30. My jaw tightened. 100,000, I repeated. That's what you need. They exchanged glances, hopeful. And something inside me cracked, but not from pain this time. From clarity. You know, I said slowly, it's fascinating how you talk about debts and payments so easily. You left me alone at 13 with nothing but a note. But now you want me to cover your bills? My father's voice hardened. That's unfair. No, I said. What's unfair is showing up 15 years later pretending to care when you really came for money. They looked wounded, but I'd seen better acting in college theater. After dinner, they hugged me goodbye outside the restaurant. My mother whispered, think about what family really means, sweetheart. We all make mistakes. I drove home shaking, torn between rage and heartbreak. I didn't sleep. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Miss Winters, this is Sandra Kelly. I worked with your parents years ago. I saw their names connected to your aunt's obituary. And you need to be careful. There are things you should know before you trust them. I sat there staring at my phone pulse hammering in my ears. Then I went to Vivian's study. If anyone had prepared for this moment, it was her. And she had. In a locked drawer labeled Winters, I found a folder that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I barely slept that night. My mind was a whirlpool of dread, anger, and disbelief. Every creak in the house felt louder than usual. Every shadow looked like a ghost of my past waiting to confront me. At 3 in the morning, I found myself in Vivian's study again, the same room where she had built her empire, and the same place where I now searched for clues like a desperate detective in my own life. The drawer labeled Winters wasn't locked to keep me out. It was locked to keep the truth safe until the right moment. When I opened it, I found organized folders labeled with meticulous precision. Legal documents, reports, bank receipts, even handwritten notes. And on top, a manila envelope with my name printed neatly across the front in Vivian's handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. Inside were photocopies of court forms, notarized signatures, and letters from social services, all referencing one thing: my guardianship. Except the word wasn't temporary, it was permanent. Vivian had fought for me. She hadn't just taken me in out of obligation. She had fought for full custody legally and completely when my parents disappeared. There were also private investigator reports full of pictures and summaries that made my stomach twist. Photographs of my parents in casinos, in motels, in cheap bars. Reports describing debt collectors, forged affidavits, and even one record of a $15,000 payment to my father made by a man named Louis Barker right after the guardianship hearing. The investigator's note was blunt. Payment appears linked to parental consent for guardianship transfer. My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. So that's how they had done it. They hadn't just left me, they had sold me. Not to Vivian. She had been the one cleaning up their mess, protecting me from the chaos they created. But to fate itself. To money. To desperation. The woman I had cried for, the man I had once prayed would come home. They had signed me away for a stack of cash. I wanted to scream, to tear the pages apart. But Vivian's voice echoed in my memory, calm, pragmatic, steady. When emotions rise, stay anchored in truth. So I stayed there, anchored, until the tears finally came, quiet, exhausted tears that burned more from understanding than from grief. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Thompson's office with the file under my arm, my expression composed but my pulse roaring in my ears. My parents were already there, sitting side by side, my father pretending calm, my mother wringing her hands like a nervous actress waiting for her cue. Beside them sat a man in a cheap suit who introduced himself as Gerald Hoffman, their attorney. Just a precaution, my father said smoothly. We want to ensure everything is handled fairly. Fairly. The irony nearly made me laugh. Mr. Thompson entered, carrying several files and a laptop. His assistant followed, setting down a tray of coffee and water like she was preparing for a court hearing. The atmosphere was charged, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken hostility. Thompson sat folded his hands and spoke with the calm of someone who already knew how this would end. Before we begin, he said I'd like to clarify my role. I am both executor of Ms. Hughes' estate and through her provisions legal counsel for Ms. Winters. My father's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. My clients are here only to ensure that the estate transition is properly managed, Hoffman said. As her legal guardians, they. Thompson raised a single hand, stopping him mid-sentence. That, he said firmly, is the confusion I intend to clear up today. He opened the first folder, a thick stack of documents, their edges worn from age but still perfectly ordered. When Elaine came into Ms. Hughes's care, Thompson began temporary guardianship was indeed established through family court. Over the next 6 months, social services attempted multiple times to contact you both to formalize arrangements. He paused, glancing up. None of those attempts succeeded. My mother's lips parted. We were moving a lot back then, she said quickly. We never got those notices. Thompson's tone remained neutral. Notices were sent to your last known addresses and published in legal journals. 6 months later, the court scheduled a hearing regarding permanent guardianship. At that time, a man named Louis Barker appeared with notarized documents signed by both of you consenting to the transfer. My father frowned. We never signed anything. That must be a forgery. Thompson removed another sheet and slid it across the table. Ms. Hughes suspected that might be your claim, he said, which is why she hired a private investigator to verify the truth. He opened another folder filled with photographs. The investigator located both of you in Nevada during that period at several casinos in the company of known gambling associates. He also documented a payment of $15,000 from the same Louis Barker the day after those affidavits were filed. My father's jaw clenched. That was a business transaction. Of course it was, Thompson replied dryly, though one might question the timing. He turned to me briefly, his gaze kind but steady. Vivian anticipated this conversation, Elaine. She made sure every detail was documented. Then he reached for a sealed envelope. This, he said, is a letter from your aunt. To be read only in this exact situation. He handed it to me. The familiar handwriting, sharp, elegant, unshakable, made my throat tighten. I opened it carefully. The paper smelled faintly of her favorite perfume. My dearest Elaine, if you are reading this, it means your parents have reappeared. Please understand this is not coincidence. Over the years, they have attempted to use you as leverage for money on multiple occasions. 6 months after you came to live with me, your father demanded $50,000 in exchange for not contesting custody. I paid it. 3 years later, he asked again. I refused. When you turned 16, your mother called claiming she was dying of cancer to gain money for treatment. It was a lie. When you got into college, they asked for tuition money not for you, but for themselves. The words blurred as my tears fell onto the page. I never told you any of this because I wanted you to heal without hatred. But they will come back when they think you are vulnerable, when they believe you have something they can take. I need you to know that you are safe. I filed for adoption when you were 16. You are legally my daughter, and the entirety of my estate belongs solely to you. Your parents have no claim, not to your name, not to your future, not to you. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Adopted. She had adopted me and never told me. I continued reading, my voice shaking. I didn't change your surname because I hoped reconciliation might someday be possible, but I did everything necessary to protect you. Please do not let guilt or nostalgia blind you to manipulation. Blood may tie us to people, Elaine, but love the kind that shows up and stays, that's what makes a family. The final line was simple. Trust yourself. You have my strength in you. Vivian. When I finished, the room was silent except for my trembling breath. Thompson cleared his throat gently. I have the official adoption documents here, he said, placing another file before me, all properly executed and sealed by the family court. You were and are Vivian's daughter in every legal sense. He turned to my parents, whose faces had gone pale. Furthermore, he continued, Ms. Hughes included a clause in her will: any challenge to her estate or to Elaine's adoption will result in the full transfer of all assets to the Vivian Hughes Foundation for Abandoned Children. If you proceed with legal action, there will be nothing left to inherit. Their lawyer's mouth opened, then closed again. My father's voice came out low and bitter. We didn't know about any adoption. We were told it was just temporary guardianship. By whom? Thompson asked, eyes sharp. My mother's voice trembled. Social services we. Thompson tapped the folder in front of him. All communication records are documented, including your signed consent forms and the payment records attached. Your denial contradicts written proof. My father slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. You paid us off and stole our daughter. Thompson didn't even flinch. And now you've just admitted to accepting payment for the transfer of custody, Mr. Winters? For your own sake, I'd advise lowering your voice. This office records all meetings for legal transparency. My father froze. His face flushed red and then drained white. He stood abruptly. This isn't over. We have rights. I looked at him, the man who once tucked me into bed, who told me monsters weren't real. He was wrong. The monster had been him all along. Dad, I said quietly, my voice steady, almost eerily calm. I found Vivian's file. I know about the other families. He frowned. What other families? The Petersons, the Galinskas. The same pattern. You and Mom posing as relatives to claim inheritances after wealthy deaths. My mother gasped. That's not true. Vivian documented everything I said. She even recorded your phone calls. My father's anger cracked, replaced by calculation. Listen, Elaine, this is all a misunderstanding. We can fix this as a family. I stood slowly. No, I said. We're not a family. We were once, maybe. But families don't sell their children for gambling money. Thompson stood with me. There's nothing more to discuss. Ms. Winters, you're legally secure. They have no claim. My father's voice rose again. You can't erase us. We gave you life. And Vivian, I said, my voice breaking but strong, gave me everything else. He froze at that. For the first time, he had nothing to say. As security escorted them out, my mother turned back, eyes shining with tears that came too late. This isn't who we raised you to be, she cried. No, I whispered. It's who Vivian raised me to be. And for the first time in 15 years, I felt free. When I left Thompson's office that afternoon, the world outside looked different. The sunlight felt sharper, as if the truth had scraped a layer off my skin and left me raw but awake. I sat in my car for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, replaying everything that had just happened. My parents' lies, the evidence, the letter, Vivian's voice written across those pages with such clarity and love. For 15 years, I had lived with the ache of unanswered questions. I thought I needed their explanation to heal, but now I realize closure doesn't always come in the form of an apology. Sometimes it comes as proof. That night when I returned home, Vivian's house didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like ours. Every wall, every polished floorboard, every framed photo whispered her lessons: discipline, integrity, truth. But then the doorbell rang. I looked through the glass and saw headlights, a rental car parked in the driveway, my parents. For a moment, fear surged, that instinctive childlike panic that they'd take everything again. But it quickly burned away into something steadier, resolve. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. You can't be here, I said firmly. Mr. Thompson is filing a restraining order. You'll be served soon. My father's expression hardened, his polished charm stripped away. We are still your parents, he said, voice rising. You owe us the decency of a conversation without lawyers breathing down your neck. I owe you nothing, I replied evenly, but I'll give you 5 minutes. After that, I'm calling the police. They pushed past me anyway, as if my words meant nothing. My mother's eyes darted around the foyer, tracing the chandeliers, the marble floors, the framed art. Her lips pressed together, a mix of envy and disbelief. So this is where she lived, she murmured. No wonder she wanted to keep you from us. I crossed my arms. She didn't keep me from you, you did that yourselves. My father stepped closer, his tone sharpening. Vivian poisoned you against us. She always hated me. She took you to hurt me. She took me, I said quietly, to save me. They followed me into the living room, uninvited. The air between us felt thick with ghosts. Not the supernatural kind, but the kind made of memory and guilt. My mother sat down, smoothing her skirt like she was preparing for a performance. We made mistakes, Elaine. We were sick. I had depression. Your father had his addiction. We didn't know how to cope. I stared at her. You left a 13-year-old alone with a note, I said. My voice wasn't angry, just hollow. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? Waiting by the phone for days, checking the mailbox for months, praying for someone who's never coming back. Tears filled her eyes, glistening under the chandelier. We thought about you every day. Thoughts, I said, don't count. Actions do. My father cut in, defensive now. You've been brainwashed by that woman. She used you for her own ego. She didn't have children of her own, so she took mine. She didn't take anything I said. You gave me away for $15,000. My mother gasped. My father's face drained of color. How I found the reports I said, interrupting. I saw the bank transfers, the investigator's notes. You didn't lose me. You sold me. For a moment, the room was dead silent. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel, each tick a hammer striking truth into the air. Finally, my father laughed, a short, bitter sound. So what if we made mistakes? You wouldn't even have this life if not for us. We gave you life, Elaine. Don't forget that. No, I said softly. Vivian gave me everything else. She taught me what life is supposed to look like when someone truly stays. My mother stood shaking. You've become heartless. She's turned you against your own blood. I learned from her, I said, that blood isn't the same as love. The police lights appeared outside, blue and red flashing against the tall windows. Thompson had arranged for patrol checks after our meeting. He must have known they'd come. That'll be the officers, I said calmly. You should go now. My father grabbed my arm. You think you can cut us off and live happily ever after? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I looked down at his hand, then back up at him. Everything you just said is being recorded, I replied, nodding toward the corner of the ceiling, where a small black lens blinked softly. Vivian installed security cameras years ago. She knew exactly what kind of people you were. His grip loosened. For a flicker of a second, I saw fear in his eyes, not of me, but of losing control. He turned to my mother. Let's go, he muttered. She's not worth the trouble. Those words landed harder than any slap. Even now, even when everything had been exposed, he still saw me as something, not someone. My mother lingered at the doorway, her tears glinting like glass shards. You'll regret this, Elaine. You'll be alone with nothing but money to keep you warm. Family is everything. I agree, I said softly. Vivian was my family, you were just my DNA. Her face crumpled. She walked out into the flashing lights. And just like that, they were gone again, two silhouettes swallowed by the dark. When the police car pulled away, I stood alone in the foyer, surrounded by the echo of everything unsaid. My hands were shaking, but my chest felt lighter. For the first time in 15 years, there was no fantasy left to cling to. No illusion of parents who might come back changed. They had come, and I had finally seen them clearly. Thompson called an hour later. They've been officially served, he said. They can't come within 500 feet of you or contact you directly. They said it's not over, I murmured, staring at the night through the window. They're bluffing, he said. We have their signatures, payments, and the adoption papers. If they try anything, the court will shut it down instantly. You're safe, Elaine. Safe. It was such a small word for something I had longed for half my life. After we hung up, I walked through the quiet house. The rooms no longer felt haunted by loss, they felt claimed, inhabited by new strength. In Vivian's bedroom, I found a small wooden box on her nightstand that I had never noticed before. Inside were keepsakes, school photos, report cards, newspaper clippings of my awards, even the program from my college graduation. She had saved everything. At the very bottom was a small envelope with my name written in her delicate cursive. I sat on the bed and opened it. Elaine. I've never been good at saying how I feel. My generation equated emotion with weakness, but you taught me otherwise. So let me say this plainly. I love you, not because I had to, but because you made me proud every single day. You are brave, kind, and stronger than I ever was. Watching you grow has been my life's greatest privilege. I didn't adopt you to protect you. I adopted you to honor the truth that you were mine in every way that mattered. Be well. Be wise. Be happy. Mom. That one word, Mom, undid me. All the walls I had built, all the careful composure crumbled. I wept not for the parents who had abandoned me, but for the woman who had never called herself my mother, yet had been one all along. And for the first time in years, the tears didn't taste like grief. They tasted like release. 6 months later, the restraining order still held. My parents had gone back to Arizona. There were rumors that they'd tried to sell their story to a newspaper, but the editor, a friend of Vivian's, called Thompson instead. It died before it began. The mansion became my home. I repainted rooms, filled them with color and light, replacing her order with my warmth. The dining room, once formal and cold, now doubled as my workspace. Two monitors sat on her antique mahogany table surrounded by fresh flowers. The business thrived. I modernized everything: online marketing, digital inventory, even an e-commerce branch. Every new success felt like a dialogue with her, a continuation of her legacy. But my proudest creation wasn't a store. It was the Vivian Hughes Foundation for Family Reconnection, a nonprofit for children who, like me, had been abandoned or separated. We offered therapy scholarships and housing for young adults leaving foster care. It was my way of saying I survived and now others will too. My therapist, Dr. Freeman, the same one Vivian had hired years ago, once told me, "Closure isn't about forgetting, it's about no longer needing the apology." And she was right. Because now when I think of my parents, I don't feel hate, just distance, like they belonged to another life, one I outgrew. And when I think of Vivian, I don't feel just grief. I feel gratitude. She had turned my broken beginning into a life worth living. Last week I visited her grave. The stone is black granite, simple, elegant, exactly her style. I added one word beneath her name: Mother. Standing there, the breeze moved through the trees like a whisper, and for a fleeting moment I could almost hear her voice, calm, wise, unshakable. "Stay anchored in truth, Elaine." And I smiled, because for the first time I truly was. Have you ever had to redefine what family means? Do you believe that blood alone deserves forgiveness, or that love is something we must earn through care, trust, and consistency? If my story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what does family mean to you? Because sometimes the family that saves us isn't the one we're born into, it's the one that chooses to stay.